San Francisco police have intensified their so-called Operation Zebra.
Have you ever heard about a gang of black serial killers? No? In the 1970s, a group of Muslims with a violent splinter ideology, connected to the Nation of Islam, terrorized Northern California. This is that story.
Called Death Angels. The local group appears to be a division of a larger organization dedicated to the murder and mutilation of whites and dissident blacks. The mode of killing is by random street shooting or hacking to death with machete, cleaver, or knife.
San Francisco, a city once seen as peaceful, creative, alive. But in the early 1970s, fear began creeping through these streets after dark. At first, people thought the murders were random. A shooting here, a body there. But then another victim appeared, and another.
The area where police found the young woman, laying in a pool of blood. They don't know much about the killing, except that sometime around 10 o'clock last night, the couple was walking down a street in the North Beach area, and they were abducted by 3 men at gunpoint.
And another. Soon, the city realized something horrifying. Someone, or multiple people, were hunting innocent strangers. Not for money, not because of personal revenge, but seemingly for the thrill of terror itself. And what investigators would eventually uncover would become one of the darkest chapters in San Francisco history. Imagine living in San Francisco in 1973. You leave dinner with friends. You walk your wife home. You stop for groceries. Normal life. Routine life, not the kind of life where you never imagine that in just a few seconds, everything could disappear. That's what made these murders so terrifying. The victims weren't connected. They weren't involved in organized crime. Most of them were ordinary white residents of San Francisco, simply trying to get home safely. A white college student heading home for the night. An elderly white man walking through his own neighborhood. A white married couple carrying groceries after an ordinary evening together. People living completely normal lives until they suddenly crossed paths with unimaginable violence. At first, police didn't even realize the murders were connected. One shooting here. Another body found days later somewhere else. A stabbing got a survivor barely escaping with their life. Different crime scenes, different witnesses, different neighborhoods. But then investigators started noticing something deeply disturbing. The same caliber weapons, the same ruthless efficiency, the same witness descriptions repeating again and again. And slowly, a horrifying realization began to form. These weren't isolated crimes. Someone was deliberately hunting innocent white people across San Francisco.
News conference this morning. A gun fired at me twice and shot me.
Did you see the man shoot at you?
No, I didn't see him shoot at me because my face was turned towards the women. And the man came from my left side and I was facing this way. After hearing the gunshots, I thought that there were firecrackers going off because I didn't see anything. And the women started running away to protect me and asking me to come with them. I started chasing them to calm them down and reassure them that no one's going to hurt them. And at that point, they told me that the man was trying to kill me, and I wheeled around quickly to see what they were talking about. And that's when I saw the man for the first time, standing about 8 or 10 yards away with the gun in his hand, looking at me with this blank stare.
For 179 days, the city would live under that fear. 179 days of uncertainty. 179 days of citizens checking over their shoulders while walking home. 179 days of families terrified their loved ones wouldn't make it back alive. And the psychological damage spread quickly. People stopped trusting strangers. Restaurants emptied earlier than normal. Women became afraid to walk alone after dark. Even ordinary sounds became terrifying. A car slowing down beside you. Footsteps behind you. someone watching from across the street. That fear consumed San Francisco.
You don't walk around here at night.
No. Well, we were planning on moving anyway.
It's gotten to be pretty rough, I think.
It's dangerous.
But then, the investigation took an even darker turn. Detectives began noticing something disturbing about the victims. They were all white, and witnesses across multiple crime scenes kept describing young black male suspects fleeing calmly after the attacks. At first, police hesitated to publicly discuss the racial pattern. They feared exactly what would happen next.
That's all speculation, Dick, believe me, and we speculate like everybody else and just trying to figure out what it was, but what it is, but it's just motiveless as far as we can say.
Panic, anger, division, and eventually, that's exactly what happened.
But I think in a case like this, that every vehicle available to us should be utilized so that we can't say later that something wasn't done. I think everything has to be done to bring the killers to justice.
Because once the city realized these murders might be racially motivated, San Francisco changed overnight. People no longer viewed the killings as random street violence. Now it felt ideological, targeted, deliberate. The biggest problem facing San Francisco police was simple. They had bodies. They had shell casings. They had terrified witnesses. But they still didn't know exactly who they were hunting.
Peter and Richard Haig left their Chestnut Street home around 9 o'clock for an evening stroll when two neatly dressed men approached the young couple. A night of terror which left the 28-year-old woman the victim of a vicious murder had begun. The Haigs were forced at gunpoint into a van driven by a third man. Richard Haig was struck unconscious, and when he came to, his wife was lying dead beside him. Passers-by took the bleeding, incoherent man to the nearest police station. When police returned to the scene at 25th and Minnesota Streets, they found the body, hands tied behind the back, the throat slit almost completely through. Homicide inspectors can offer no explanations. Money was not the motive, as the Haigs had only a few dollars between them.
Then came the murders that pushed San Francisco into panic. 84-year-old John Bambick shot while walking alone. Francis Rose killed near the waterfront. Paul Danzig was shot while walking home. Ilario Bertuccio murdered returning home from work. Ordinary civilians. No connection to each other. No warning. But the killings didn't stop. They accelerated. And what terrified police most was how quickly the attacks were happening. Sometimes multiple victims in a single day. Sometimes only hours apart.
187s and an attempted 187. A series of 4 to 6'2". Slender build, short to medium length hair. Mustache, possible goatee, wearing a...
And that's when panic struck. Police feared there were multiple killers operating at the same time, because no single attacker could move this quickly. 19-year-old Neil Monian was murdered in San Francisco. Young, ordinary, another life gone almost instantly. Nelson Shields, a young white man helping move a rug into a vehicle. Without warning, he was shot. Then came Tom Rainwater, a Salvation Army cadet, a man trying to dedicate his life to helping others. He was murdered during the spree as well. Witnesses continued giving similar descriptions. Young black men, sometimes in pairs, sometimes in groups, often calm after the attacks. That's when San Francisco launched Operation Zebra.
The shootings began last night around 7:30 in the Haight-Ashbury district. By 10 p.m., 4 persons lay dead, all white. Another victim lies critically wounded in San Francisco General Hospital. Police have labeled the manhunt Operation Zebra. All the victims were shot with .32 caliber bullets, which came from 2 and possibly 3 weapons.
Police flooded neighborhoods, stopping black men matching. Broad suspect descriptions connected to the killings. Hundreds were questioned.
It was sponsored by the Committee Against Racism, which claims the Zebra Stop and Search operation is an attempt to start a race war in San Francisco. They say it's a move which will inspire fear of blacks and justify even more harassment of minorities.
The city instantly became divided. Some residents demanded aggressive action before more people died. Others believed innocent citizens were being unfairly targeted. And while tensions exploded across San Francisco, the killers were still free.
Lest we catch them right in the act, or so-called, in police talk, an en vue pinch. That's the way we'll solve these crimes.
By the time the zebra murders finally came to an end, 14 people had been killed. At least 8 others survived shootings or brutal attacks. And for 179 days, San Francisco lived under constant fear. Police believed the true number of attacks may have actually been even higher, because some victims survived without immediately realizing their cases might be connected, and investigators suspected other murders outside San Francisco could possibly be tied to the same group. But despite all the fear, despite the massive dragnet, despite hundreds of people being questioned, police still had no solid suspects, until one man changed everything. His name was Anthony Harris, and according to investigators, Harris saw one of the police sketches released during Operation Zebra and believed it resembled him. That moment terrified him, because Harris allegedly knew exactly who police were hunting. So Harris contacted investigators. At first, detectives were cautious, but then Harris began revealing details nobody outside the killer should have known. Specific victims, specific crime scenes, specific weapons, specific conversations connected to the murders. Detectives realized almost immediately this was real. For hours, Harris gave statements describing what police believed was a violent extremist group behind the killings. According to investigators, members referred to themselves as Death Angels. Harris claimed they believed murdering random white civilians would help ignite racial conflict and chaos throughout San Francisco. Suddenly, the entire pattern made sense. The random victims, the coordinated attacks, the racial targeting. The reason valuables were often left untouched. These weren't robberies. Police believed the killings were acts of terror. Armed with Harris's information, investigators moved fast. On May 1st, 1974, police launched coordinated raids across San Francisco. Several suspects were arrested: Larry Green, Manuel Moore, J.C.X. Simon, Jesse Lee Cooks. During searches tied to the suspects, investigators reportedly recovered weapons, including guns, machetes, knives, ropes, and ammunition connected to the killings. And as detectives compared statements, ballistics, and survivor testimony, the case finally came together. The men were eventually charged in connection with multiple murders and attacks tied to the zebra killings. The trial became one of the most disturbing murder trials in California history. Survivors testified, families of victims filled the courtroom, and jurors listened to weeks of testimony describing random executions carried out across San Francisco. Eventually, the defendants were convicted and sentenced to life in prison. 3 later died behind bars. 1 remains imprisoned after repeated parole denials. After 179 days, the killings stopped. But the psychological damage remained long afterward, because for nearly 6 months, ordinary people in San Francisco lived with a terrifying belief that death could appear without warning on any street, at any moment. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We appreciate viewers like you.